but I guess this isn't really a problem. It shouldn't add too much speed to the application. So if is not a number event date, which essentially means if it is a number, then we display these. Now when you see a refresh, we just get these default 0 values here, as opposed to this NaN error, or this NaN value. So now when I remove this, this statement here evaluates to true, and the numbers are placed in corresponding to their day, hour, minute or second. So let's go ahead and focus on this callback function. Now what we actually need to do is create an if statement above our or at the top of our function, and what this will do is it will calculate whether the event date is less than or equal to the current date, and if so, then we can send our callback function and clear our interval. And it's important that we clear the interval, or the interval will carry on counting down these values in the background. So what we want to do is we want to say if event date is less than or equal to the current date. That means that the event has taken place, or the event, or it's counted down to the event that we've specified. So here, the first thing that we want to do is callback, and the second is clear interval. So clear interval is pretty easy. All we do is we use the clear interval function, and we specify the interval name. And here I've called the interval by setting this interval here to this interval variable. So we can go ahead and just place interval in there. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what happens. Obviously we haven't called anything back, but let's go ahead and change this to today's date, which is the 8th of August, and let's change it to we're at 16:02 at the moment, so we'll change this to 16:03. Okay, so you can see that we've got 40 seconds to count down. So what's going to happen here is that when the event date is less than or equal to the current date, so i.e. when this reaches 0, according to the calculation, we're going to clear the interval, so the countdown will stop. If we didn't have this line in, it would carry on and everything would mess up because we'd be counting into minus figures. So let's just wait for this countdown to reach 0, and you'll see that all that will happen is that as it does reach the current date, we will just stop the counter, so the interval will be cleared, and this will stop counting down, i.e. the function will stop being executed every 1 second. So we'll just wait for this to reach 0, and there we go. You can see that it stops there, so the interval has been stopped and we've been left at 00 days, hours, minutes, seconds. So you could leave it at this state. However, you might want to perform an action once this has reached its current date, or reached the event date. So we want to actually call back. So I'm going to say callback. In fact, let's actually specify a parameter or an option up here first, which is callback. And in here we want to say callback.call this. So what will happen is that we can specify this when we do it in ext.js, and then when the event date is less than or equal to current date, we've already seen the clear interval, but we call back and therefore we execute the function that's associated with this here. So what we can do now is create a function here, and this here is equal to, or is the parameter callback. So when we send this callback here, when we send call, this function will run. So if we come down and let's alert, done. So much like you do with predefined features in jQuery, we're just doing it ourselves essentially, and this is how we would do it ourselves. So let's go ahead and change this to say 16:05 and refresh. You can see that we've got 36 seconds, so we'll just wait for that to count down. And when we do get to the event date, like we've seen by clearing the interval, this time we send the callback, it sends it to here, which is our function, and we run this line inside of this callback parameter. So let's just wait for that to reach its 0 seconds, and then we'll see this alert dialog box come up. A lot of waiting around, but it doesn't matter. And we're nearly there. So when it gets to 1, we send the callback, and the callback function is that we alert this done dialog box, so we can see that that's happened there. Now what I'm going to do, just as an example, is say countdown.text, which is the current element that we're working with, inside of here, I'm just going to say we're live and just escape that character there. So now what's going to happen is when we specify this again in here, and when we refresh and we wait for the countdown to happen, this will be performed. Now I'll talk a bit about why it's useful that we actually incorporate callback functions into our plugin, and this is because we want to make our plugins as reusable as possible. We want users to be able to not have to go into the plugin code and modify what they want to happen. So by using a callback function, the user can say, well, when the date reaches its specific date, I want to carry out a particular action. So they can define this themselves and extend our plugin without us having to, or without them having to go and modify it. So you can see now that the text has changed to we're live. So if we were to say release this as an official plugin, or send it to our friends to use, or give it to someone else in our workplace to use, all they have to do is declare the plugin, which we've already created. We could have had it minified and zipped, and all they need to do is define a date and a callback function. They can specify their own date, which obviously has to be a correct string, and then they can create a callback function to do what they want to do when the date has reached. So that's how we create our countdown function in jQuery, and how we can make it usable and reusable using this option here and this callback function here.